How would you feel if you had the highest paid roster in the NBA playoffs and you were sent home in the first round? Upset, frustrated, confused at how everything went so wrong? The Los Angeles Clippers spent over $200 million on a team that was built to dominate offensively in hopes of winning a championship. And they failed to do just that. Because here is every team's payroll relative to their points per game in this year's playoffs. Over here are the Magic, who surprised everyone this season with what some would consider to be an overachieving roster, as Indiana spent their money wisely to build an offensive dynamo. In this sphere, you'll find franchises who are getting their money's worth at the most important time of the season. The Pelicans and Heat down here, not so much. But the Cavs, they somehow made it to the second round. Now all the way to the right, you can spot the fourth lowest scoring team this postseason, who also happens to be the highest paid roster in the playoffs. Safe to say, it wasn't a worthy investment. The Clippers were built to win now, like today, in this very moment. Instead, they were met with poor performances and untimely injuries, weaknesses that might have just closed their championship window. Over the last decade, the LA Clippers have been known for two things: choking and injuries. It's been a cycle. They play great for a month and we label them as future NBA champions. The hype dies down, we get near the playoffs, one of their stars gets injured, and they disappear off the face of the earth. Rinse and repeat. But this year was supposed to be different. The Clippers headed into the season as healthy as they've ever been in the Kawhi and PG era. The Claw played his most games since 2017. Podcast P and the System also did the same for their highest total in over 5 years. Things were finally starting to go their way. They might actually win a championship. Ah yes, the inevitable Kawhi Leonard injury. The dude just can't stay healthy. Since joining LA, he's missed nearly 35% of all playoff games, including 7 of 11 in the last 2 years and over 40% of the regular season. You always hear the saying that the best ability is availability, and unfortunately for Kawhi, it's about the only thing that he lacks in his game. Not to make fun of the dude, but it's kind of funny cause the Raptors essentially rented Leonard for 1 season and he won more playoff series that year than he has in 5 seasons with the Clippers. It's nuts. Health has been the main issue during this era. Winning a championship is extremely difficult, even with a healthy roster. Trying to win one without your best player is virtually impossible, especially when he's your only playoff riser.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger?
With Kawhi out of the lineup for the majority of the series against Dallas, you'd expect Paul George and James Harden to really step up, to play like one of the best offensive duos in the playoffs to make up for the loss of their best player. They did the complete opposite. Out of the 16 highest scoring duos this postseason, PG and the Beard had the 14th lowest scoring average. They're literally putting up Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma duo type numbers. This is legendary. In fact, Jalen Brunson averages damn near the same amount on his own. The Clippers need the Claw. He's the only playoff performer on the team. Kawhi increases his scoring by nearly 4 points, averaging more rebounds and assists on greater efficiency from the field. Playoff P, however, doesn't live up to his name. Other than rebounding, his numbers remain relatively the same from the regular season to the playoffs with lower efficiency. As a superstar, you're expected to thrive when it matters most. Paul George hasn't, and when they've needed him the most, he disappears. Because here are PG's averages in game 6s and 7s during his time as a Clipper. No, these are not Russell Westbrook numbers. This is a man who gave himself the name Playoff P. The dude can't hit the broadside of a barn. PG has been a nuisance to his team in the most crucial moments of the season. But somehow the Clippers have a 4-4 record during these games. And the only reason for that is because Kawhi turns into one of the greatest basketball players I've ever seen with my own two eyes during these moments. Like, seriously, these numbers are ridiculous. LA needs him on the court to have a chance of winning in the playoffs, because when he isn't, their season is left in the hands of players who lack the ability to execute under pressure. And once again this season, history repeated itself. Games 5 and 6 were the pivotal moments of the series. LA had a chance to go home and get up 3-2, but they didn't. And in a Game 6 to save their season, the big dogs stunk it up. In those games, Harden and PG combined for 56 points on 28% from the field and 17% from 3. To put this into context, in those games, Luka single-handedly outscored them and sent them packing to Cancun. This is an embarrassment. Leaving it all out on the court and losing is one thing. You earn respect for that. But to lose two of the most decisive games of your season by an average of 21 points cannot happen no matter the excuse. Luka and Kyrie are regarded as the greatest offensive tandem in the NBA. We understand that, but they shouldn't be outplaying 3.5 future Hall of Famers. Yet that's exactly what they did. Points generated is a metric that combines a player's total points plus the amount of points scored off their assists. For example, Kyrie scored 159 points in the first round against LA. He also averaged over 4 assists per game, which resulted in 62 points for his teammates, bringing his points generated total to 221. Now combine that with Luka's 313, and as a duo, they produced 534 points for the Mavericks. That is 9 more points generated than PG, Harden, Westbrook, and an injured Kawhi combined. Had Kawhi played more than 2 games in the series, this likely wouldn't have been the result. But let's be honest, we all knew an injury was due, and the Clippers did everything in their power to minimize its impact. When they traded for James Harden, it was basically insurance. The hope was that when one of their stars inevitably got injured, he'd be able to pick up the slack on offense. But when the time came, he didn't. LA turned their dynamic duo into a big three, or what some consider to be a super team, in hopes of finally getting over the hump. But like many teams have in the past, they completely imploded. The 2008 Boston Celtics, however, did not implode. They saw immediate success when they formed their big three, winning a championship in their first season together. But it did more bad than good for the NBA. It seemingly blinded teams and owners into believing that if you throw a bunch of stars together on the same team, you'd be able to fast track a championship, when in reality, it rarely works. Because here are some of the most prominent big threes of this era and how close they got to winning a championship. You'll quickly realize that just making the conference finals is a rarity. Those who did went on to win it all, and 4 of these teams failed to make it out of the first round. History tells us that in order to succeed with a big three in this era, you need either the greatest team ever assembled or have arguably the greatest basketball player of all time on your roster. Otherwise, you'll fail. And that's exactly what we saw with the Clippers. Prior to the trade for Harden, LA had depth, long wing defenders and shooters who can space the floor, complementing their star duo. But instead, they opted to go big or go home. And in this case, they went to Cancun. 5 years ago, the Clippers were viewed as a potential dynasty. A team that pushed a peak Warriors squad to 6 games in the playoffs was about to add the reigning Finals MVP and the greatest two-way player in the association. They were expected to dominate. LA was going to become a Clippers town. Patrick Beverley said the next 5 years were his. And similar to his career, everything's been downhill since for LA. Injuries, poor performances, and a trade that has you questioning if it was the right move in the first place. The expectation was a championship. The outcome wasn't surprising. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.